Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Oh, yes. I believe that you will be engaging us together to the extent that is possible. But before we do anything, we will just have to get the formalities out of the way. And that is with Advocate Ndamane administering the oath, whether it's going to be the oath or the affirmation. And then Mr. Lloyd Abrams taking you through a basis in the best manner possible, given what we have. Advocate Ndamane.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Zama Ndamane, I will start with you. Will you be taking an oath or an affirmation?
I'll be taking an affirmation.
No problem. Mr. Zama Ndamane, do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is so, please raise your right hand and state, "So I affirm."
So I affirm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ndamane. Mr. Ali Osmani, how do I pronounce your surname?
Osmani.
Osmani. Mr. Ali Osmani, will you be taking an oath or an affirmation?
Affirmation.
No problem. Mr. Ali Osmani, do you swear that the evidence, or rather do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is so, please raise your right hand and say, "So I affirm."
So I affirm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osmani. Mr. Osmani and Mr. Ndamane, you've both been sworn in as participants in the SJN hearings.
Yes, Mr. Abrams.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
My name is Lloyd Abraham. My role is to make sure that you are going to tell your story to the Ombudsman in the best way possible. Now, before we start, I see there's two of you, and it's unusual for us. So we need you to guide us as to how you're going to do the presentation. Let's start there.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, if I may start, thank you very much for the opportunity that the Ombudsman has granted us to appear in front of the hearings. I'm going to be the person who makes a statement from the Institute.
Yes, sir.
And I'm the chairperson of the Institute, the Abu Asfat Institute.
Yes, sir.
And with me is my fellow board member, comrade and colleague, Ali Osmani, who will be going through the documents that we've submitted as the Institute to the Ombudsman. So between the two of us, mine is to do the overall introduction and closing statements, and Ali to then take you through the documents, and then the two of us will be then able to take questions if there are any from the Ombudsman.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Mr. Ndamane. I just want to remind you that you've been allocated an hour and a half to tell your statement. So between the two of you, please, if you could just pace yourself in such a way that you make maximum use of that time allocation, and that by the time that time expires, you have told us your whole story. So seeing that you are going to be starting, Mr. Ndamane, if we would appreciate it, if you could then introduce yourself, introduce the institution, and tell us about your involvement, particularly in the game of cricket, and then tell your story, and then you will hand over to Mr. Osmani as and when you deem it necessary. So please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. My name is Zama, otherwise known as Z. So feel free to either call me by my African name, Zama, or by my cricket name, which is Z. And I represent a very important organization in our beloved country, which is called the Abu Asvat Institute for Nation Building. I come before you as the chairperson mandated by the board of the Abu Asvat Institute, and I need to make a declaration in front of the Ombudsman in that I carry many hats in my journey in life, and the one that is important for the Ombudsman to know is that I'm currently involved in Cricket South Africa as what is called a match referee. Previously, I was a franchise cricket umpire that officiated in many matches at franchise level in cricket. Previously, I was an administrator that used to work for Cricket South Africa, and later on worked for Gauteng Cricket Board as an administrator at the Wanderers Stadium. The game of cricket is embedded in my blood from generations of my uncles and family who played the sport in the Eastern Cape mainly. And obviously when I became an umpire and a match referee, participated at national level. The game of cricket is very close to my heart. It is one of my biggest passions. And I'm here to contribute to the narrative and to assist the Ombudsman in terms of social justice, nation building, and dealing with the many issues that Cricket South Africa is faced with. In closing of that part, I'm here in my capacity as a chairperson of the Abu Asvat Institute for Nation Building. With that short background, I'm going to hand over to my fellow board member and comrade, Ali Osmani, to also introduce himself. Through you, Chair.
Yeah, Ali is still trying to get rid of his children or other people who are in the surroundings. The floor is yours, my comrade. Ali.
If I might, by your permission, I have originally come into the Abu Asvat Institute from a cricketing background that dates back into the SACOS era of cricket under the United Cricket Board, and more particularly as an official of the old Transvaal Cricket Board, which subsequently then became the Cricket Association of Transvaal, which then subsequently merged with Cricket Gauteng. And the story, as you have it at the moment, is that it's all in one united cricket formation under what is now known as Cricket Gauteng or CGL, an affiliate of the United Cricket, of Cricket South Africa. I, for many years, was a serving chairman of Queensland Cricket Club, and together with that, I also served on the old Transvaal Cricket Board as an executive member, and subsequently as General Secretary of the Transvaal Cricket Board. And as time went on, eventually through the unification, when a big formation took place, at the time of unification, all the Lenasia clubs united to form one united organization, namely the Lenasia Cricket Club, of which I was then the General Secretary for a number of years, and also represented the Lenasia Cricket Club at all the board meetings at the time with our official controlling body. So that just basically spells out where I've come from in cricket. I've served as a chairperson. I've been a bit of a coach, and I'm glad to say a lot of the chaps that I coached have gone some places. And other than that, our own acquired skills of doing umpiring and so on was part of the grassroots involvement that we were forced to do back in the day. And that gave us a very good working knowledge of cricket laws and coaching and the various aspects that went into the organizing and administering of the game of cricket.
Thank you very much for that introduction, sir. Mr. Ndamane.
Basically going through our submission.
Yes, sir.
I need to remind the committee that we became quite interested in the way things were unfolding as we witnessed several of the people coming into the committee to speak about their experiences and so on. What really is at the core of this cricket matter, really speaking, when one examines it in its entirety, our belief strongly is that this channel of racism, it has not been buried quite clearly from our point of view. And when I say that, I'm going to clarify that it comes from the very, very top. Unfortunately so is the fact that our sports ministry, if I might be blunt, the sports ministry, I believe, has failed people on the ground. And that then has filtered down into the various other elements that make up the national sports body. So I'm not going to delve into the question of budgets and how budgets are allocated and so on and so forth. That's a discussion for another day. I need to relate particularly to how things have unfolded with the Abu Bakr Aswad Institute's involvement in the actual game of cricket, and how we find that in our experience, nation building has been compromised. Also, we have experienced the fact that there is no doubt that there is structural racism being practiced by the authorities that we have to deal with in terms of our sports and our social activities and other activities in life. But for now, we'll focus on where we're involved in with the cricket aspects and the nation building aspects. On the cricket aspects, on our document, we say very clearly where we've come from in terms of cricket and how we've structured it. We found that in terms of the legacy of the late Dr. Abu Bakr Aswad, that we had to go in to the most marginalized areas and see just how the young people have taken to cricket and whether they're actually being fully integrated and accepted at the right levels in cricket. And also being a platform to enhance nation building through sport. And we found this a very important tool. Having said that, we have over the last, well, a few of our tournaments over the last 2 years have had to be cancelled, partly now because of COVID. But prior to that, we had to call a halt on our activity in 2019. that expressly because of very, very terrible and atrocious facilities that are humanly degrading. But we'll get back to that. In the larger sense, when we undertook to involve the most marginalized youth in cricket, we found, to our amazement, that number one, cricket at schools was not at the right levels. And that tells you that at the very basic grassroots level, if it is not at the right levels, from our own cricketing experiences as cricket players and administrators, you will automatically have failures and you're automatically going to have great degrees of frustration, especially among sportsmen that are very keen to develop their abilities and their skills. Our experience with the youth in the townships is that they were always eager to find a platform where they could play at their best, enjoy themselves, and at the same time be a happy lot. And we found that the social cohesion exercise with them worked so exceptionally well that at a point, all the youth development areas under the flagship of the Gauteng Cricket Board at the time looked forward to at least being present at the tournament, if not playing at the tournament. Now, there's a lot that goes into the effort that we put in. It might be a once a year event, but it gives us a marker to determine, for example, where the child comes out of a private cricketing school, where all the facilities are there, all the technical knowledge is there, the technical know-how, and the input at a very senior level is always present. As against the youth coming out of the townships, they've largely had to depend on themselves, not having a lot of the very specialized skills available to them on call. And it certainly leaves them wanting. Children at all levels need to be treated as equal. And our view now is very much the fact that the private cricketing schools will always advance in leaps and bounds in the current structure that exists within Cricket South Africa. Yeah, I believe in all the provinces. And that leaves the most marginalized kids at a point of compromise, where the only avenues open to them from our experience is that they either get a scholarship into a private school, or through the initiatives of the various youth cricketing weeks that are available, if perchance they happen to excel in a particular youth cricket week or a youth cricket match, that 2 or 3 of those players are then recognized. The one thing that sets them back, even in that particular atmosphere and environment, is the fact that, and we know this for a fact, is that when the youth cricket weeks do take place, there is what we would call pre-selection that takes place among the private cricketing schools. Let me explain that a little better. What happens is that the private cricketing schools, under closed doors, during their own league fixtures between schools, they make selections and they arrive at those selections. Between them, they obviously say, we need to make a compromise, we need perhaps, and I'm giving an example, I'm not saying that that is the case. Maybe we need a wicket keeper, we need a specialized fielder, maybe we need a spin bowler, so we could take one from the youth development program, and that is the way the compromises, I believe, have been working. I've actually seen this work on the ground, and we've made issue about it at the time when I was able to speak as a cricket administrator at board meetings. Coming back to the institute itself, we do our level best and we have now structured a solid relationship with Cricket Gauteng. The relationship is not at its best, but we're getting there. And I need to say that, and my chairman can elaborate on that a little bit later in the discussion. When I say we are getting there, initially we were on our own. We were funding the tournament on its own, on our own backs. We had to raise all the funds. We had to do all the logistics and put in through various minor sponsorships which we got through the beneficiation of various small business enterprises who came to our rescue. The business enterprises brought in things like the refreshments, the food stuff, and so on, which took a big chunk of our responsibility for expenses out of the way. And then, fortunately, because of our then structured relationship with Cricket Gauteng, we were then able to use the youth development program to try and get the kids from the various areas to be able to structure them into teams and then bring those teams to the tournament. And the exercise has worked extremely well. The kids have come out in their numbers. They always look forward to it. Excuse me. And we've been fortunate that we take the children to a venue which is one of the most unique venues, I believe, probably in the country, if not in just Gauteng alone. It has a venue with 8 fields. So we're able to run this tournament on a very organized basis and provide opportunities in terms of number for a great many children who otherwise would not have had the opportunity. The Gauteng Cricket Board has now recently come to the party with providing logistics, and the children are then transported to the venue. Now, the one thing that keeps the children back from excellence is having to play on fields that are humanly degrading. And this is where the part of structural racism becomes very, very open. We've spoken at length and we've written at length to various bodies about the poor facilities, not only where we play or where we host the tournament, but the fact that there are more than 70 townships all over that do not even have a green space in which to have social activities. How then do you enhance sports if provision is not made to level the playing fields and allow children to take their rightful place in the areas where they are domiciled and have fields accessible to them to be able to enhance their own skills? So this is a burning question which has to be answered. We have approached the local council. When I say the local council, the regional council, we have asked numerous times for meetings with the mayor and members of the community development portfolio to meet with us and allow us the opportunity to put our case forward. We have been moved from pillar to post. We believe that the people that take the decisions are, for example, the people directly involved in the mayor's office, for example, at the local level. The mayor's office has not been forward enough with understanding the plight of the people, the communities, and the kids at large. With the result that even at the Lens Tech grounds which we've been using, of the 8 fields that we use there, I need to remind the honorable councillors here that this field was used back in SACO's days during anti-apartheid sports by the likes of Dr. Abubakar Azvat and many like him, Dr. Musaji, who has played cricket under Cricket South Africa, people like Vincent Barnes, who represented Western Province. We played interprovincial games there. And in the apartheid days, we were well able to use those fields to play interprovincial matches. Why then, under a new government, do we have to suffer the kind of degradation that we currently suffer? There should never have been a need for it. But it proves that we've been let down. It proves that there is no seriousness on the part of the authorities to take the plight of the sports people seriously enough. And that then impacts quite negatively on nation building and social cohesion, directly. Now, if the fact that they're abdicating their responsibility is one thing, but the fact that they're actually ignoring the mandate that they carry on their shoulders is another thing. And this is where our thrust has to be, to find out why this happens and why it cannot be rectified. We refuse to accept the fact, or rather the excuse that they hide behind. I wouldn't call it a fact. The excuse they hide behind is budgetary constraints. We don't see the fact that budgetary constraints should be holding back the advancement of our youth. I have a document before me which I did not submit to the council, but I will forward the document at the end of this meeting. We, for more than a year, have knocked the doors of the Johannesburg City Council and the City of Joburg, asking them to intervene and sort these cricket fields out. Let me point out that the cricket fields are very poorly maintained. It is being, at the time as I speak, being used as a field where prostitution is openly conducted and carried out. This has been brought to the knowledge of the councillors.
Where is that?
I had, if I might just add one more point, I had
Excuse me, Mr.
At the Section 79 meeting, where councillors were present, and they did an on-site inspection on the 3rd of December 2020. Nothing has emerged after that, nothing at all. And we're still sitting in the same plight. Had it not been for COVID-19, we would have been organizing another tournament right now as we speak. And we would have been our children would have had to face the same degradation as the reasons behind which we had actually canceled our tournaments. So we brought this forward to this council or to this platform for it to be taken seriously enough so that the children in the most marginalized communities can have exactly the same opportunities that are given to those in the well-developed suburbia. Otherwise, structural racism will remain embedded in our society for I don't know till when. If there are any questions, I'm willing to take a break.
I was asking what is the place that you were alluding to where you say open prostitution is taking place in the field?
Comrade Chair, if that's your question, I somehow the sound is not coming through very clearly on my side. If one of the others could speak and tell me.
Can I answer the question? Because I could hear. Sorry, Ali.
Please do.
With your permission, Chair,
yes,
the facility that we want to put on record here is a very important cricket facility, which also is used as a football facility. It is called Lenasia Tech Grounds or Lens Tech Grounds. My submission on behalf of the Institute to the Ombudsman is that obviously is one of the key aspects of providing solutions for nation building. I would request the Ombudsman, before you complete your important work of nation building, to visit Lenasia Tech Grounds. if I may just give a brief background about that ground, we've used that ground for the past 15 tournaments that we've named the Abu Asvat Junior Cricket Tournaments. If you take out the 2 years where we could not use those grounds, it is a facility that needs to be nurtured, that needs to be looked after, that needs to be upgraded to its formerly iconic stature in the south of Joburg, where the majority of the black population of Johannesburg, the majority of the poor population of Johannesburg lives. It is surrounded by areas like Soweto, Eldorado Park, Bosmont, Ennerdale. All those areas are within easy reach of that facility. The children of Lenasia are within walking distance of that facility. There are 8 sports fields in one venue at that facility. There are not many facilities in this country. If I could share with you, Chair, that personally I've been privileged because of my involvement in cricket to have visited more than 90% of cricket facilities in our country, length and breadth, east, south, north. And I've seen the best and I've seen the worst. And one of the biggest things that the Ombudsman has to address in this nation-building exercise is the importance of access to the game. One of the main reasons why the Abu Asvat Institute was formed was to inculcate the principles that come back from Black consciousness movement, some principles which are important today. The man that our institute is named after, Dr. Abu Asvat, was a Black consciousness activist who played the sport of cricket, who was involved in the medicine and also in the political spheres of this country. In our organization, we are blessed that we have activists who are very interested in nation building in this country. And our aim is to make sure that we inculcate amongst the youth and the people of this country with the aims of the Institute. And those aims are to promote activities that include self-reliance in our communities, with particular emphasis on the less fortunate of South Africa, and the majority of whom are Black communities. To promote activities supporting health programs in our communities. Broad participation, social, political, economic, and sporting, which is why we have the annual Abu Asvat Junior Cricket Tournament, which caters for the 2 very important age groups amongst the youth, which is the under 13 groups and under 15 groups. And I'll return back later why those 2 important age groups are important in the context of cricket as a sport. We also, amongst our aims, seek to promote anti-racism. And I'm going to repeat, anti-racism. We seek to promote and to counter discrimination based on race, on sex, on religion, and ethnicity as the Institute. And also, amongst the documents that we've submitted to the Ombudsman, our aim is to promote programs aimed at generation of a collective national consciousness in South Africa. And I don't have to repeat what everybody in this country has experienced over the past 14 days of wanton destruction, violence, looting, which then tells me that Abu Asfad in the 80s was correct to say no normal sport in an abnormal society. And the question that we want to ask today, in South Africa, where we have what is often referred to as a best constitution or one of the best constitutions in the world, we want to submit that our society is still abnormal. The nation needs to be assisted or helped in making sure that we build this nation, and the responsibility of us sitting here today to say to Cricket South Africa as a well-loved national federation that it is important that Cricket South Africa makes a contribution to nation building in this country. Those of us who love the sport wonder why such a rich federation, Cricket South Africa is a rich federation. It's rich in terms of the support of the nation, of the people. It's rich in terms of the diversity of the people who play and love and participate in the sport. It's rich in terms of the leadership that this national federation has been blessed with. But we must not run away from confronting the issues of discrimination, racism, the issues of not looking after the poor. It is very easy, and I've seen it in my past life as an administrator in cricket, to make the excuse that there are not enough budgets. Yes, there might not be enough budgets, but we want to submit that in those commercial transactions that South Africa gets involved in the agreements, there is not enough ombudsman. There is not enough being spent for the poor who love this sport land. You could go to KZN, you could go to Lamontville, you can go to Langa, you can go to Zwide, New Brighton. You will see that one of the major stumbling blocks for access to the game is the lack or the absence of cricket facilities in the poorest areas where the majority is black. Whether it is Soweto or Langa or New Brighton or KwaZakele, KwaMashu, facilities is a huge blockage to the access to the game, which then talks to social cohesion when players get to the levels of playing provincial cricket, and some of them fortunate to break into the Proteas team. I don't have to repeat to this committee that some of the things that have come out of this committee from some of the Proteas players are very heartbreaking, and some of them point to the fact that this country, and cricket in particular, needs to do more for nation building. And for me, it starts with investing in these areas that I've mentioned. And I want to just, in closing, touch on the structural racism net that was raised by my comrade and fellow board member, Ali Osmani. Is that structural racism is real. It is true. And it has never been dealt with adequately enough. And the reason why I say so is that I do not think that there is any federation, national federation in this country that has had so much research done into why is it that black players don't break through as batsmen, for instance, don't break through as the most active and participating bowlers, for instance. And it points to issues that are embedded in the sport, that you pick bowlers and you don't give them enough opportunities to demonstrate that they have the ability to bowl. And I'm sorry to say that if you were to go and sit down with a gentleman there at Cricket South Africa, he's my friend, and we've sat and gone through many statistics that he sits with and research, and I'm sure he shared it with the highest ranking board members, committee members, and leadership and administrative CSA. Max Jordan has all the information that is required that will demonstrate that you pick a bowler and you don't allow him to bowl. Pick a batsman and you don't give him opportunity to bat. What are you doing? And the stats are there.
You will be pleased to know that Mr. Jordan has already been here and he has already testified. And he's one of those who gave testimonies in a segment of this project or these hearings, which we labeled the trend setters or the scene setters, rather. Max Jordan. I'm just saying, in support of what you are saying, we also identified him as a person who has a wealth of knowledge who would assist this nation-building project in its quest for the mandate that it should.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Chair, that the research is sitting in Max's office, is available to the nation. And I know that he shares this because I have access, because I went to sit with Dan and had this access. Cricket South Africa does not need any more indabas. Cricket South Africa does not need any more conferences to talk about what needs to be done. The research has been done. There have been many conferences, starting from the time that people went to the Northwest for the very first time in 1999. And this information has been shared at many conferences. I was at Kivitskruan when Cricket South Africa decided on bringing in quotas. I was at the Mayanzeke conference where these things were ventilated. And there are many, many other conferences where what needs to be done has been discussed and agreements have been reached. But why is it not being implemented is the problem. Is it racism? Is it discrimination? Why is it every stakeholder that is involved in cricket has been informed of what the issues are? For instance, why are we sitting still to this day with inadequate facilities at young people's in the Boland? Why are we still sitting with inadequate facilities in Zwede? Yet, I've been to every international cricket ground in this country as an official and as a participant. We have world-class facilities in this country. You can go to any cricket stadium in South Africa, you will see that we have the facilities. This country's talent is primarily driven by between 20 to 25 schools, the top schools, who keep producing Proteas. Next will give you those numbers, or the transformation division of Cricket South Africa will give you those numbers. The majority of Proteas are produced by between 20 to 25 schools. I've been to each and every one of them. I'm privileged to have seen them. Whether it is Cares or St. Stephen's, St. Peter's, Bishops, Durban High, Affis, Pretoria Boys. You could go to St. David's, St. John's, St. Peter's, where the majority of these people come from, Grey College, Grey High. Look at the quality of those facilities. And then, not far from those facilities will be the black areas, and look at the quality of those facilities. One of them being this one that we've mentioned, because we know it very well. The Lenasia Tech Grounds is a wonderful, important facility for cricket and football in this country, with 8 fields in one venue. It could be developed into one of the best facilities for cricket and football, and you might even include other sports codes in the world at that level, at club level. And why is it not being done? And our work as an institute, which is why we've approached Cricket South Africa, we've approached Gauteng Cricket Board, we've approached the provincial government in Gauteng, we've approached the mayoral office in Joburg, and different governments of mayors in Joburg, IANC, DA, and sometimes coalitions, to say, let's develop these facilities in these areas. And what has happened recently is an indication that flags the issue of structural racism, that areas where the majority of the poor and the black, the facilities are not being developed. And there is no reason that Elka Cricket Stadium in Soweto, Bramfisherville Cricket Stadium in Bramfisherville near Dobsonville, where I was involved in developing, cannot be replicated. Yester's cricket facility cannot be replicated across this country in these areas, so that we don't have these black players arriving at Proteas level and they feel inferior, they feel discriminated against. They're not given the opportunities that they think they deserve. Action and implementation needs to be done. So I'm going to ask Ombudsman and the committee, if you have time, before you close off your report, visit Lenasia Tech Grounds, visit Bramfisherville Cricket Oval, visit Easteris Cricket Ground, visit Mamelodi, so that you can look at a template that maybe can be replicated across the country, so that we stop getting all of these really heartbreaking stories so many years after cricket unity in this country. On structural racism, we want to state that the material conditions in this country have not changed since 1994. I don't have to be an economist or a scientist to give you the numbers. They are out there and they're evident, which is why we had such serious problems over the past 10 days in this country. I'm not saying it's right what was done by many people in looting and in violence, whatever, but it's an indication of the problems that this country is still abnormal. This nation is still abnormal. The majority of black communities have no facilities. Black schools, the majority of them have absolutely no facilities. And those who have facilities, the facilities are in a very bad state, in terrible conditions. Clubs in those areas, in those communities, the facilities are not the greatest, which then leads to very poor training facilities, coaching, and wrong techniques for us, for instance, to develop batsmen on nets that are not suitable for good quality coaching of batting techniques, because the facility doesn't allow to. In Soweto, you have about 2 million people, 2 cricket grounds. I was involved in building one of them. And I was asked, why do you do that when there was another one? It's not enough. Those 2 are not even enough for an area as big as Soweto. And you're sitting with human resources there that could be developed to really make the Proteas team strong and to build this nation. Only very few black people escape those areas into the elite schools so that they can enjoy the facilities that people experience in a school like, for instance, my child's school, St. Stephen's, which produced Kagiso Rabada, with 18 nets, 18 cricket nets on one area of the field. And on top, on the other side, there's more nets for a total of 24 cricket nets. And if you then go to any school in Mamelodi, in Kwamashu, Langa, where Themba Bavuma comes from, it is a huge issue, the question of facilities, Chair, because it gives access. Until we resolve that, these problems are not going to go away. We've got to find a way, in terms of commercial agreements, to invest in developing these facilities, and not just invest in developing these facilities, produce quality facilities. And I want to give you an example because I was involved in one of them. In building a facility of the quality of the Bram Fisherville cricket facility with indoor nets, running water, hot water, where the Australian team came and ran a coaching program. The Proteas came and ran coaching programs, and the facilities were of a standard where both those 2 international teams could do that. Where Bangladesh come there, where the National Academy come and play cricket there, and nobody could complain of the quality of the facilities. So don't just build facilities, build quality facilities that build human dignity, so that at all stages, you will always find a shower, a change room, running water, good quality net facilities, good quality outfields, a proper square with proper middle for proper development of these skills. And I'm giving an example, and I hope that facility is still in that condition that I mentioned, where Bangladesh, the National Academy, the Proteas, and Australia test squads went, which is Bram Fisherville. Please go and have a look at it, Chair, and your committee. And please just put in as one of your flags that in part of this nation building, we've got to move quickly and with speed to develop these facilities in areas like Lenasia Tech Grounds, in Lenasia and others. It is important that we understand that in terms of the structural racism, we need to confront the issues that cause players that came in front of you, who are Proteas players, who are heroes of many children, who reveal shocking stories of what happened in the Proteas setup. We've got to get to the core of the problem, not deal with the symptoms. and deal with racism if that is a problem, and deal with discrimination if that is the problem, and deal with all of these issues to make sure that we are committed, really committed to transformation, and not just talk about it. Commit to make sure that we do the right thing as a nation, and in particular in South Africa and in South African cricket. The problem is material conditions have not changed, which is why Cricket South Africa every 10 years has a judge coming in to deal with those issues. I'm sure, Chair, you know that there was Judge Nicholson. You know that there was Judge Langa. You know that there was recently Judge Ngwepe. We must move away from that as a nation and as a sports federation of getting judges and lawyers to come and deal with transformation, racism, and other issues. And I hope, Chair, if you may excuse me, that after the report by Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza, we will never have to bring another judge to deal with issues that Cricket South Africa and its leadership can easily deal with. I have a book here that I brought, and I hope you can see it. It's an important book, and I was hoping that we were going to see you personally, Judge, so that my institution can give you this book so that in your spare time you can read it. It's called the Abu Asvat, the People's Doctor. Abu Asvat was known as a people's doctor, and we are here to honor him, which is why we're doing this important work. And we don't only do it in sport, we do it in education as well, and we do it in the medical areas as well, because it is important that we build our nation. And our Abu Asvat Institute is determined to build this nation. I'm going to refer you in this book, Ombudsman. I'm going to refer you in this book to go, before you produce a report, to go and read page 55. We will send you a copy of this book. Read page 55 to page 62. It's a chapter that Dr. Abu Asvat was very, very, very principled about. The chapter is called No Normal Sport in an Abnormal Society, which was his rallying call in the 80s. And it will provide some of the solutions you're looking for. Read those pages, sir. And we recommend that you deal with this issue once and for all, so that we don't bring any other judge to deal with transformation in South Africa, which can be done by our own people who are stakeholders. As part of our submission, we've also submitted another document, a book that we call the Abu Asvat Junior Cricket Tournament. We are pleading with you to read it, and as part of your solutions, to also look at how can we help our country, and cricket in particular, to build this nation. No normal sport in an abnormal society. I'm going to end there, and Ali, I don't know if you have anything to add before we take questions, if there are any.
Thank you very much, Zed. Comrade Chair, if I can, I would just like to elaborate on a few things. Among the things that my erstwhile colleague has just elaborated upon, I'm sure the gist of what he has said will not be lost upon the committee members that are sitting and listening to all these submissions that are coming before them. Among the things that impact very, very negatively is the question of opportunity. Now, if ample opportunity and equal opportunity is made available to people, especially the youth across the board, then one of the things that has to be borne in mind very clearly is to make them accessible and reachable and affordable. Among those things are the question of schools of excellence. Why is it that kids from the townships, and I'm sorry I mentioned the word townships, it's just such a degrading term for me, but I have to use it because it has relevance. Why should kids in the townships have to go to schools of excellence that are based, for example, in Pretoria? Everybody has to go to Pretoria. Why are there not hubs of excellence developed in areas that are accessible? For example, if area X is a hub, then the supporting areas A, B, C around that particular hub should have a school of excellence with its relevant technical expertise, the relevant facilities available for the children to be able to advance themselves. It becomes a number crunching game. We need not be afraid of numbers. If, to be blunt, if black children, all black children are going to represent Cricket South Africa, so will it be, but it will be on an equal footing, on an equal basis, on the basis of being recognized for their human excellence, for the fact that they have got the human ability to be able to get there. We have no issues with regard to the question of merit selection. But before you even get to merit selection, the question has to be addressed of making everybody feel equal, everybody feel comfortable, and everybody having the correct opportunity. Until we do not get there, we will have these niggling problems occurring from time to time, and I must insist that the problem is not here at the bottom. The problem starts at the very top. It starts at the Ministry of Sports. It has a mandate. It has not fulfilled its mandate in its entirety. I'm afraid that we need to look up there and make sure that the people up there understand their mandate and their responsibilities. So too are the committees that work below them, in the local councils, in the municipalities. They all have people that are allocated a mandate to look after sports and social activities of the communities that they are representing. And they have failed in their responsibilities, and we have first-hand examples that will demonstrate that that is the case. This is what impacts directly on the accessibility of facilities for the most marginalized of people. If we develop the schools of excellence and make them available to people across the board, easily accessible, I'm almost certain that many people would agree with the fact that I'm saying we will have many, many more high-quality players, and we need not look at the question of color affecting or creeping into the selection or into the administration of the game itself. So, as we started in terms of our submission, the facilities with a big capital F looms by and large up there. And more importantly, the question of structural racism in the way the question of facilities and meeting out equal opportunities for everybody is concerned, that is where we are. And the moment we can address those, we will arrive at a solution which benefits the whole country, which gives every young child, every youth, the right opportunity and be able to say, I can stand up for myself. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation. There are certainly lots of takeaways from what you've told us. And I think a lot of questions that I had have since been answered by either of you. The one question I want to raise, and either of you could answer it, is I think Mr. Ndamane makes the statement that CSA doesn't need any more indabas to talk about what needs to be done. From there, we gather that what needs to be done is well known. And the question is, and you may not be qualified to answer that, but venture a suggestion anyway. Why is it that nothing has been done by all the reports, all the investigative reports that have been written and that are sitting with the CSA? Why is it that nothing, in your view, has not been done to date?
Well, I'll give over to my chairman, but from my understanding, very clearly, there is the lack of will to be able to do it. That's the first part. And for me, the second part would be the fact that it starts to compromise. I'm going to be very hard with the term white. It starts to compromise white control and, more importantly, corporate control, white capitalist control of sponsorship and other things, which then impact on these very questions that we are raising. Zed.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be very blunt because in my previous life, I was very involved in Cricket South Africa, and I understand the sport very well because as a player, as an umpire, as a match referee, I deal with a lot of cricketers at all levels in this country. And the problem is power struggles within Cricket South Africa at the highest level, the board level. Governance issues, these have been ventilated a lot. Religious and political groupings and factions across the length and breadth of the country within Cricket South Africa. And these issues have never been dealt with honestly to say, what is it that we need to do as coaches, as captains, as players, as umpires, as scorers in this country? Why is it that we like to support the most powerful and sometimes not the correct fit for the sport in order to just push our own agenda? Power struggles at highest level in Cricket South Africa have led to us not confronting the issues. And sometimes the different factions, be it white factions, black factions, Muslim factions, Jewish factions, Christian factions, that serve short-term interests and not the sport. Our focus should be about the children, the under 13s and under 15 age group that I said I'll return back to, that we deal with. Because in this sport, if we don't develop the correct skills for the Proteas in the under 13 age group and the under 15 age group, we will never win the World Cup. We must invest in facilities that develop those skills, particularly in that age group under 13 and under 15. Because this country needs the entire nation. And to close off this part of the question, a good friend of mine, Jerry Waja, in our association, defeats me because I always defend my sport, cricket, which is cricket, and it comes from the Tennis Federation. In the 80s, they built the biggest, largest tennis participation amongst black people and all races in this country, all ethnic groups in this country. And I'm amazed that today we hardly ever find black tennis players. But Jerry still insists to me that we as cricket are a colonized sport. We have lunch and we have tea and we have all of these fancy British colonial activities, and we never want to deal with them because it's nice to be in the long room. And he's right. Although I've defended my sport, it's important that we need to deal with what has Sri Lanka done. In my previous life, I once went to India and I was involved in an under-19 game between Sri Lanka and India. 80% of those players who played in that game are now test players and ODIs. I'm going to request this committee to look at, I was particularly impressed with the Sri Lankan schools and what they do. Maybe this committee needs to provide a solution that says to Cricket South Africa, let's learn from other nations. Let's learn at what the Sri Lanka schools are doing in that tiny island and to produce. And they won the World Cup already. We haven't. And the question is, why has South Africa never won the World Cup? When we have, I think, world-class schools, particularly the top 20 schools who produce the produce, they've got everything. Devon High, Kes, St. Stephen's, St. John's, St. Peter's, St. David's that produce Tembak Bavum. You can even go to rural areas if you want to. And go to Goldfields that produce Dean Elgar, the national test captain. We've got everything. We could win the World Cup in this country. We've got the facilities in the areas that have built them. We've got the weather. We've got the coaching. We've got the knowledge. Why is it that we never break through? Why is it that we don't do these things? Back to your question. Why don't we implement these things that we've spoken about in many, many conferences, starting with Kwamaritane, to Give It Screwn, to Mayenzeke, to everywhere? Why is it that we keep coming back to the same frustrating, heartbreaking stories of players who are heroes to our communities? Paul Adams, for instance, is a hero. I watched Paul Adams walk onto the field at St. George's Park in his debut match to bat. And the almost entire stadium stood up because it was a seminal moment for Paul Adams to walk onto that field at St. George's Park. I was sitting in the stands. I'll never forget it. And recently I had a heartbreaking story from Paul Adams. And why are these things being allowed and not dealt with? Is because we don't confront the real issues. That's my submission.
Yes, I've got just a few engagements I need to have with you. But before I do so, I want to tell you, Mr. Ndamane, that I'm going to hold you to it. I need that book like yesterday. In fact, with the two books on Dr. Aswat.
This book, Chair, is a donation from my institute. And as a chairperson, I'm going to give an instruction to Rashid Dawood and to Shabir Randera that they must personally come and deliver it with you together with our media person, Ali Osmani.
Yes.
You've got it. You've got it, Chair.
And it must be autographed. Yes. Both of you have raised a number of questions or of issues. There is a view that if selections of players are going to be race-based, then they are going to be in violation let me not interpret this. There is a submission here. It says it is our position that the race-based selection policies such as quotas are discriminatory and they violate the International Cricket Council's Code of Conduct. The ICC Code of Conduct states that the game should be free from discrimination. The important part here, of course, which I want to ask you about, and political interference, which unfortunately is the situation in South African cricket. And this submission refers to former Minister of Sport, Mr. Mbalula, and they quote him as having said things that, in their interpretation, amount to political interference. Now, my question with regard thereto is, what is the stance of the Institute for Nation Building to this vexed question of whether or not the Minister of Sport in this country has any role to play at all in cricket? If on the one hand there is an expectation from the nation or from people like your good selves that the minister needs to intervene, not interfere, intervene. That's the one view. The other view is when once the minister intervenes, then that amounts to political interference in the views of others. And that interference is violative of the ICC code. And that presents a dilemma. It's a question I'll put to the minister as well when he comes. How do you deal with a perspective that says change is not coming to cricket because there is a lack of political will? The minister has the powers, or should have the powers, to intervene when he is of the view that transformation does not take place or does not take place at acceptable levels. That's the one end. The other end would be if the minister is going to seek to dictate to Cricket South Africa, then the ministerial dictation, in whatever form it takes, amounts to that kind of political interference that the ICC Code of Conduct is warning against. So that dilemma, how do we deal with it when we write our report? Or
Zama.
Let's get your views generally on that kind of dilemma.
I'm going to selfishly give our point of view as the Institute. Like I mentioned earlier,
yes,
that the Institute comes from a particular political history in terms of our membership and people who give of their time as volunteers and the communities that we work with in the work that we do in all the different spheres of our nation building.
Yes.
The black consciousness movement produced some of the best people this country has ever known. And one of them is the late Steve Biko. And in terms of our institute, we unashamedly belong in that sector or in that sphere of the past. And I'm going to quote what Steve Biko said a long time ago. The late Steve Biko said, "The most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed." And I'm quoting verbatim. "So as a prelude, whites must be made to realize that they are only human, not superior. Same with blacks. They must be made to realize that they are also human, not inferior." Unquote. There is the dilemma of the minister and you, Chair. Why is it that the minister, sitting in his position where he was dealing over the last 12 months with an intransigent board that was illogical, unreasonable, and did not want to listen to reason? Cricket South Africa board members, why is it that they continue with all of these actions that were not in the best interests of the game that is so beloved in our country? Why would that minister not be given the opportunity that obviously exists in his powers to exercise? The dilemma is, if he intervenes, then it's seen as political. But why have the minister then, if he's not going to intervene when a Cricket South Africa goes off in a tangent that's going to destroy the sport ultimately? Why can he not intervene? As a principle of the Abu Aswad Institute, we do not subscribe to racism. We want to build this nation so that it does not matter what your ethnicity is or what your color is. That was the strength of the misunderstood principle of Black consciousness. It wanted to build a nation where, whether you're white or black, and in terms of our institute, is white or black. And I'm sure you've not heard me, Ali and I, talk about colors and Indians and black Africans and everything else. The late Judge Langa came with the solution of so many whites, so many blacks, so many. He was a great legal mind. But as an institute, we disagreed with that solution. And we still do, vehemently so. Because the solution for Cricket South Africa is not so many whites, so many blacks, so many Indians, so many coloreds. We disagree with that. Because ours, if we're going to build this nation to become a successful nation, a leading nation, color does not matter. But it will be wrong, and we'll certainly fight any racism based on color because of our past. This country has a particular past of apartheid. So, Chair, the minister must intervene when a body like Cricket South Africa does something that is detrimental to the sport and to the nation. Would you now tell me that is interference? That's political interference? Because obviously those are the questions that are being asked. I need to say this, that the current Minister of Sport, in the matter that is dealt with over the past month, the board matter, has been very well advised and has taken very correct actions. But obviously, the ultimate responsibility for what has gone wrong is not the minister intervening. It is the people that are running the sport from top to the bottom. And particularly the responsibility for, I'm going to call it the mess that Cricket South Africa got involved in until the minister decided to intervene, was because the flags that were raised were never adhered to, they were never observed, and the voices that spoke the truth were never listened to, because in Cricket South Africa, it is very easy to tend to side with the most powerful instead of siding with the most reasonable and those that were speaking the truth. And we've got to move away from that. Cricket South Africa, there are many examples around the world. There are many examples of successful cricket bodies around the world, commercially, legally, governance, participation, development of human potential players. Some of them not as rich as Cricket South Africa. I mentioned Sri Lanka earlier on, World Cup champions. We've got to learn from others. And I'm sure there are many examples around the world. And there are many benchmarks around the world of what a good government and a good minister should do when things raise like this. I'm going to close off and I'll give to Ali if he wants to say something. The West Indies was once a whites-only cricket team. And the West Indies became a blacks-only team, which was dominant and world beaters in the 60s and the 70s. I think the one between 15 and 17 series under the great leadership of captains like Clive Lloyd and others. They won World Cups. And was it because they were blacks-only teams? I don't see it that way. I see it as they were the best at the time in terms of their quality and their skills. And this country could have a blacks-only team in the future. We could win a World Cup, provided they're world beaters like the West Indies under Clive Lloyd and Viv Richards were. And it's important that I close off by saying, why are the West Indies bottom of the pile now? It's because the West Indies, when they were at the top, never ventured to deal with the challenges that were confronting them. And South Africa, if South Africa, Cricket South Africa wants to be the best in the world, they must not shy away from the issues of structural racism, of discrimination, of not investing in the poor areas where there's huge talent. Of the top 4 federations in this country, cricket, rugby, football, and netball, cricket is being left behind. Yet cricket has got the best structures because of what we mentioned earlier. Being left behind because rugby has decided to handle the bulls by the horns, and they're currently sitting with 3 world championships, and they're sitting with a black captain. Football, there's no question about it, has moved a long way to embrace the entire nation. Netball is busy doing the same. And I'm afraid to say my sport, cricket, with all the structures and some of the best facilities in terms of stadiums in the top 20 schools, I'm ashamed to say we've been let down by those with the power to take us forward. Thank you, Chair. Ali?
Thank you, Zama. I think that was...
Sorry, through you, Chair.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
That was very well put, Zama, and I cannot disagree with the submission you've made. There are some very simple basics that the minister has to face, and some of those very basics are, it starts off with his or her particular mandate with regard to serving in the best interest of the country. I understand fully that the minister would have a situation where he may be in a quandary with regard to dealing with several sports federations. But the minister has accepted a position, and having accepted a position, he has been given a mandate. And in that mandate comes the fact that he has to consider listening, looking, and seeking advice that would be in the best interest, like Zama's just pointed out, of the country at large, without looking at particular scenarios. And the moment we start doing that and think holistically of a nation, we will advance. But you cannot go into the starting blocks, for example, by saying, in a cricket sense, that black people don't have a cricket culture. I think you would be fooling yourselves. Because we know full well, history has recorded the fact that black people did play cricket for many, many years in this country. But we know for a fact that statistically, and what has actually happened on the actual playing field and the actual administering of cricket has been another story totally different. So the minister has got a responsibility, and he has to fulfill the mandate according to the responsibility that has been vested in him. And Zama has given the lead in that. Thank you.
Yeah, my penultimate question before I do also my closing remarks is, what would your attitude be if there was a view that said there is no point in making facilities available because we can show you a number of state-of-the-art facilities that were put up. For instance, Mr. Jordan showed us a hub that was built in Khayelitsha and standalone. And the view was that that hub had since been vandalized and all the material had been looted, and that may well be the attitude of those who say, what's the point of building up these facilities? Because the evidence is that when we do build them, like the one we built in Kalicha, instead of it being used, it is vandalized because the people do not see any value in it. So how would we, I put this question to another person in the SACCOS tradition, but I don't know if you listened and heard what he was responding, how you responded to the question, but I thought I may just as well, get an opinion from you. What would you say if somebody turned around and say, yeah, well, it's all very well for Mr. Ndamane to say facilities. We build these facilities and then people go and vandalize them.
Can I answer, Chair?
Yes.
Just as much as you have a facility that's been built in Khayelitsha and vandalized. Earlier on, I mentioned a facility that I want you to visit in Bramfisherville,
Yes.
Dobsonville, Southwest Soweto. That's not been vandalized. Not a brick stolen. And when I left Gauteng Cricket in 2011, that facility was one of the best in Johannesburg at the time. And I pray to God that it's been well maintained and continued. There is no reason to propose that facilities must not be built because they're gonna be vandalized. I'm currently, please go and visit Bramfisher. Take anybody who says when you build a facility in the township, it will be vandalized. Please take them to that facility. And the reason why I mentioned Dobsonville, Bramfisherville, where I was personally driving my team to build a facility there that was at the time for a club ground, world class, with indoor facilities, where children would move from Glen Vista, from Bryanston, and come with their parents, white parents, to be coached by a coach called Ruben Mandlazi, who is currently the chairman, the manager of amateur cricket at Wanderers Stadium, who produced Kagiso Rabada. And on the submission that we've given you, there are 99 players that were produced by that program in that facility. Human capital cannot be wasted.
It looks like you have muted yourself. Mr. Ndamane, you have muted yourself. You can't get through. Yeah. Well, Mr. Asmani, can you hear us? There must be a connection, because even you can't hear.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Well, It's like you're whispering.
Okay.
Oh yeah, well, I hear that clearly.
Can you hear me?
Very clearly now.
Thank you.
Very clearly.
All right.
Yes.
Let me finish up quickly.
Yes.
There's a very important residential area in Port Elizabeth called Red Location, and I'm involved with volunteers, some of them very prominent in that area. It's an impoverished area, and we'll build world-class facilities there, and the community is fully behind us. And the key to vandalism, Chair, is when you build,
Yes.
you must, and this is an example, this is a lesson from Fisherville. When you build, you must involve the community surrounding that facility in the build project.
Exactly. Consultation.
You must involve them after you've built. You must involve them in putting content into the facility. Many people make a mistake of putting world-class facilities that become white elephants with no content.
Yeah.
By content, I mean programs that will run 24/7 if you can, from the local community, and then communities outside will come and join like they did in Fisherville. We will do that in Red Location. We've given them that lesson, and inshallah, to building more facilities. Because this country, if we don't do that,
Yeah.
this country will see a rise in crime, will see a waste of youth potential, will see a destruction of our nation. No, Chair, we must build facilities. I was in the West Indies World Cup in 2007, and I watched a facility program there like no other. And today, those facilities, the Proteas were playing in them. You'll never find those facilities in the West Indies in the 70s and the 80s. Today, they have them. The Proteas have just finished a series or 2 series there. You cannot stop building programs. Thank you, Chair. Ali.
Well, on that very
Very briefly, Comrade Chair,
yes.
if I might.
Yes.
Very briefly, there is this question of dignity. If a community is brought in a dignified way, in a facility, and are empowered enough to be able to take responsibility for a facility that is embedded within their community, I certainly do not see that that kind of facility would get vandalized. It's a matter, again, it comes back to the root thing of nation building. Once you include people and they become inclusive to what you are doing nation building, and those people will be proud of hosting and looking after the things that they have that are embedded in their community. Thank you.
Well, everything has to come to an end. And I think I have to thank you before we close. Thank you for such a powerful presentation. I was asking Advocate Nele, now we have 2 participants simultaneously. How is this going to happen? And the way you complement each other is something which was a wonder to observe. And the content, as you say, of your presentation obviously is going to cause us to go and reflect, and because it has interlinked with other presentations that we have heard. I think in the space of 1 day or 2 days, I've heard it said by people who testified like you, remembering Hassan Howa,
Yes.
and you now bringing into our knowledge the fact that Hassan Howa was not alone. There was an Abu Bakr Asvat who also swore by the mantra, there can be no normal spot in an abnormal society. The only tragedy is that after 30 years since the unity talks, we still are having to recall words that were uttered by people who are since gone. And you may or may not have heard that for my sins, I was in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And when you mentioned the name of Abu Bakr Asvat, the people's doctor, I recall that I sat at a hearing, not unlike this one, at which his tragic death and murder on the 27th of January, 1989, was a subject of our hearing, in a hearing that took place here in Johannesburg. Here was a man you now reveal was more than just a political revolutionary in the Black consciousness movement, a people's doctor, a doctor whom Mrs. Albertina Sisulu, who worked with him, you mentioned in glowing terms as a person for whom she worked. She was also in that hearing made to recall the tragic moments of the murder of Dr. Asval in his own surgery in Rockville in that fateful day in January of 1989. So it is by no accident for me that we have people like the two of you who speak with passion about the legacy that Dr. Asvat wrote for himself and for posterity. It is my pleasure again to have to listen to testimony about his role in sports. Here is a man who dedicated his life to healing people. May these attempts that we are making now to inquire into this sporting code called cricket heal our nation, if for nothing else but in the memory of Dr. Asvat, who until the day he was murdered in his own surgery was in the process of healing the nation in more ways than one. So I cannot thank you enough for having made this wonderful presentation. And through your presentation, showing the interconnectedness of sport and life and healing. Thank you very much. We
Thank
will
you,
adjourn
Chair.
today.
Our thanks to Comrade Chair and the committee for having allowed us to make this particular submission. I understand that you're going through some very hectic time schedules, and I'm very glad that you took the time out to host us and listen carefully to the presentation that was made by us. And I'm hoping that this will serve properly as a guide, not just for you, but for all those people that need to be guided from the submission that we've made. Thank you again. Thanks once again.
Thank you. We will adjourn.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.